On my 33rd birthday, my mother-in-law, Genevieve, handed me divorce papers tucked inside a plain manila envelope. We were seated at the precious table in Atlanta, and she declared it openly, her voice echoing through the hushed dining room of the Sapphire. My husband, Darius, didn't stand up for me. Instead, he pulled out his phone and began recording, the camera's light glinting as he waited for me to break down. He craved a viral moment of my disgrace to share in their group chat. I glanced at the papers, then at the camera, and rather than bursting into tears, I grabbed my pen. I thanked her, signed the documents on the spot, and walked away without shedding one tear. Little did she know that by forcing my hand, she had just unleashed the largest financial downfall Georgia had ever seen. Before I reveal how I dismantled the Sterling dynasty with a single signature, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever had to smile through heartbreak, hit like and subscribe. The air inside the Sapphire was so cold it could preserve meat fitting, because I was about to be served up like a dish. We sat in a secluded booth at Buckhead's most elite restaurant, surrounded by velvet curtains and the quiet buzz of old wealth. This was the Sterling family's natural environment. At the head of the table sat Genevieve, looking like a queen who had just delivered a death sentence. She wore a cream-colored suit that surely cost more than my first car, her eyes tracking every waiter's move with sharp focus. To her right was my husband, Darius, who looked less like a confident real estate executive and more like a frightened child awaiting his allowance. Across from me sat my sister-in-law, Bianca, and her husband, Chad. Chad was the only white person at the table, wearing his privilege like a thick perfume. He leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of scotch older than me, and gave me a smirk that made my skin crawl. "So Naya Chad," he said loudly enough to draw attention from nearby tables. 33 years old, that's quite an age for someone from your background. I've heard people from where you grew up don't usually live that long. I cut my steak slowly, refusing to meet his gaze. My background was a sore spot for the Sterlings. I grew up in a small apartment on the south side, while they were raised in gated mansions with a staff. I earned my way through college with scholarships and determination, becoming a forensic accountant, while Darius drifted through life on his mother's influence. "Be kind, Chad," Genevieve said, though her tone lacked true warmth. "Nia has done remarkably well considering her upbringing. We're here to celebrate her after all." She raised her champagne glass, the bubbles sparkling under the crystal chandelier. "To Nia," she continued, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "A toast to the girl who proved you can take the girl out of hardship, though you can't fully remove the hardship from the girl. We've tolerated your presence in our family for 5 years now, and that's worth noting." Darius chuckled quietly, a nervous, uneasy sound. I looked at him, hoping he'd stand up for me, tell his mother her backhanded praise was hurtful. But Darius just took a sip of his drink, his gaze fixed on the tablecloth. Her backhanded compliment stung deeply, but Darius merely took a quiet sip of his drink, his eyes fixed intently on the tablecloth. Though he was 35, in his mother's presence, he reverted to a child. "You all are too much," Bianca laughed, adjusting the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her mother, purchased with company money I had overseen. "Nia, you know we're just teasing, right, Nia? Marrying into this family means having a tough skin." I calmly took a sip of water, my hand steady. "I have thick skin, Bianca. I handle financial fraud and corporate embezzlement for a living. Insults from people who can't even manage a checkbook don't bother me." The table fell silent. Chad stopped swirling his drink. Genevieve's eyes narrowed sharply. "Is that gratitude I'm hearing?" she said, lowering her voice. "After everything we've given you, the roof over your head, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, you act like you earned it all, Nia, but never forget who signs the checks." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that I was the one who saved Sterling Properties from bankruptcy 3 years ago. I wanted to scream that the roof I lived under was paid for by the tax loopholes I uncovered. I wanted to scream that the car I drove was 5 years old, while Chad cruised in a new Porsche leased on company credit. But I remained silent. I was a forensic accountant. I knew in any investigation, you don't reveal your hand until you have all the facts. "I apologize, Genevieve," they said evenly. "I'm grateful for everything the Sterling family has allowed me to experience." She seemed satisfied with my concession. "Good. Because tonight, we have a special gift for you. A milestone birthday calls for a milestone present." She reached beneath the table and pulled out a large manila envelope. It was thick, weighty, and completely plain. No ribbon, no wrapping, just a stark yellow envelope that screamed business. She tossed it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy thud between the floral centerpiece and my untouched bread plate. "Open it," Genevieve ordered. I reached for the envelope. My fingers brushed the paper, and a strange tension filled the air. The service melted back into the shadows. The music seemed to fade. It felt like the moment before an unavoidable crash, when you know impact is coming but can't look away. Suddenly, Darius moved. He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket and held it up, the camera lens trained on my face. "What are you doing?" I whispered, stunned that he was recording this moment. A cruel smile curled on his lips. "Mom said this is a memory we need to keep." I glanced at Chad. He leaned forward eagerly, elbows on the table. "Go on, Nia," he challenged. "See what Daddy and Mommy got you. Bet it's a one-way ticket back to the hood." I ripped open the envelope. Inside was a stack of legal paper clipped together with a blue cover sheet. I pulled them out, and the bold black letters at the top hit me like a blow. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." I froze. The words blurred before my eyes. Divorce papers, on my birthday, at a dinner party. I looked up at Darius, like he was still filming the red recording light blinking like a warning. He wasn't looking at me with love or regret. He was focused on his screen, checking the frame, making sure the lighting was good enough for whatever group chat he planned to share it with. Genevieve, surprised, clapped once. Certainly the lighting was sufficient for whichever group chat he intended to post it in. Genevieve, taken aback, clapped once. "We believed it was time to rectify an error we made 5 years ago. Nia, you never truly fit here. You were a temporary mistake, a diversity hire for our family portrait. But the agreement has expired." I glanced back at the documents. My eyes moved swiftly over the legalese like someone well-versed in contracts. It was harsh, utter devastation. The conditions were explicit. I had to vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. No alimony would be granted. I had no rights to any future profits from Sterling properties. I would leave with only the personal belongings I brought into the marriage, essentially my old clothes and my student loans. "You signed a prenuptial agreement?" Bianca reminded me sweetly, her tone laced with sarcasm. "Remember, we insisted on that. You walk away empty-handed." Chad let out a sharp laugh that filled the room. "Nothing personal, darling. It's strictly business. You were a poor investment. Low return, high upkeep. Time to cut losses." I glanced at Darius again. "Say something," I whispered. "Please tell me this is some cruel prank." Darius lowered his phone slightly but kept recording. "It's no joke, Nia." "Mom's right. We're just not the same. You're always working, always obsessing over budgets and audits. You're dull. Honestly, you embarrass me. My friends have wives who know how to unwind, who know how to spend money, not just track it. I want a wife, not an auditor." The sting of it left me breathless. I'd spent 5 years cleaning up his messes, hidden his gambling debts, repaired his credit, managed the properties he was too lazy to oversee. I was boring because I was the only grown-up present. Genevieve leaned forward, triumph plastered across her face. "There's a pen inside the envelope, dear. Sign it. Spare us the trouble of hiring a process server. Sign now and you keep the car. Resist us, and we'll drown you in legal fees until you're out on the street." I eyed the pen, a cheap plastic ballpoint. Appropriate. Inside, my heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. Shame flushed my face, hot and sharp. I wanted to flip the table, toss the wine in Chad's face, slap Darius until he dropped that phone. But then my training took over. I'm a forensic accountant. I deal in facts, not emotions. I seek the hidden numbers, the buried secrets, the leverage others overlook. And as I stared at Genevieve's smug expression, one fact crystallized in my mind. She had forgotten a document she signed 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Sterling Properties was on the brink. Chad had embezzled money through a shell company, and the IRS was closing in. To save the business and secure a substantial government grant reserved for minority female-owned enterprises, Genevieve begged me for help. She transferred 51% of the company stock to me. She thought it was just on paper, a nominee agreement, she called it. She believed I was a placeholder, a straw figure to discard once the crisis passed. But she hadn't read the fine print. I had. I glanced at the divorce papers again. Paragraph 4, Clause B, was explicit. All assets shall be divided according to legal title and ownership at the time of filing. Based on legal ownership, a cold calm swept over me. It started at the base of my spine and spread through my veins, chilling my blood to ice. It began at the base of my spine and coursed through my veins, chilling my blood to a frozen stillness. The tears that had threatened to spill vanished into thin air. The trembling in my hand ceased. I reached into my handbag. I didn't reach for the cheap pen Genevieve had given me. Instead, I drew out my own Mont Blanc fountain pen, the one I had purchased to celebrate passing my certification exam. I clicked the cap off sharply. "You know what, Genevieve?" I said, my voice calm and smooth as polished glass. "You're absolutely right." Darius looked puzzled. He focused on my face, expecting me to break down. "Am I right?" Genevieve asked, wary of my tone. "Yes," I replied. "I don't belong here. I've been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for 5 years. I've been attempting to teach fiscal responsibility to people who believe money grows on trees. It's draining, and honestly, I'm worn out." I laid the papers flat on the linen tablecloth and smoothed out the fold. "This isn't punishment," I said, locking eyes with the camera on Darius's phone. "This is freedom." I signed my name, Naya Sterling. The ink was deep and unyielding. I dated it. I even added the exact time, 8:42 p.m. Chad stopped drinking. Bianca's jaw dropped slightly. They had anticipated a confrontation. They had expected pleading. They imagined me begging them to keep me. I slipped the pen back into my bag. I rose, brushing off a non-existent crumb from my lap. "Thank you for dinner," I said, "and thank you for the gift. You've just saved me about $5,000 on legal fees." I was going to file next week anyway, but I didn't want to spoil the surprise. I grabbed my clutch. Darius dropped his phone. It clattered on the table. "You were going to file," he stammered, his voice trembling. "Oh yes, Darius. I've been planning this for months, but having you serve me first makes everything easier. It proves abandonment. It shows hostile intent. It fits perfectly with the story." "Where are you going?" Genevieve demanded, rising. "We're not finished. You have to leave the keys. You must return the jewelry." I laughed a genuine, clear laugh. "The jewelry is costume, Genevieve. You bought it on clearance at a department store outlet. Keep it. As for the keys, I'll leave them on the counter when I move out tonight." I turned to walk away. "Wait," Chad shouted, his face flushed. "You can't just leave. You have company laptops. You have passwords. We need access to the accounts." I paused and glanced back at them one last time. My family. The people who had treated me like a servant for 5 years. "You should have thought about that before serving the chief financial officer with divorce papers in the middle of a tax audit," I said. Chad's face drained of color. "What audit?" he whispered. I smiled. "The one I started this morning. Good luck with the IRS, Chad. I hear they're especially thorough this time of year." I exited the private room and stepped into the main dining area. Their shouts echoed behind me. I heard Genevieve yelling at Darius to act. I heard Chad cursing. I made my way through the restaurant, heads turning as I passed. I must have looked like a woman on a mission, because the hostess silently stepped aside. I pushed through the heavy double doors into the humid Atlanta night. The valet saw me coming and hurried to my car. While waiting, I pulled out my phone. One message awaited me. It was from Bianca, sent 5 minutes before I signed the papers. It was a voice note. A message awaited me. It was from Bianca, sent just 5 minutes before I finalized the paperwork. It was a voice memo. I pressed play, holding the phone to my ear. "So you think you're clever?" Bianca's voice taunted through the speaker. "Just wait until you get home." Chad already called the locksmith. "The locks have been changed. By morning, your belongings will be out on the lawn. Good luck finding a shelter that accepts trash." I deleted the message. They believed locking me out was a power move. They thought making me homeless would break me, but they had underestimated who I am. I wasn't only Nia, the wife. I was Naya, the signatory. The name on the property deeds, the name on the bank accounts. The valet pulled up in my car. I handed him $20, got inside and locked the doors. I took a deep breath, savoring the scent of leather and freedom. I opened my banking app. My finger hovered over the transfer button. They wanted a battle. They wanted to ruin me. They wanted to strip me of everything I owned. I pressed the button. Processing transfer. The screen flashed green. Transfer successful. All corporate assets frozen. Audit pending. I shifted to gear. I wasn't heading home. I was driving to the Ritz-Carlton, and I planned to pay for the presidential suite with the company card one last time before the freeze took effect. Genevieve wanted her son single. She wanted her company back. Well, she got her son, but the company she had just signed away along with her pride. I drove into the night, leaving the Sterlings to their lavish dinner and looming downfall. The real celebration was just beginning. The lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead smelled of white tea and old money, a scent that usually made me feel out of place. But tonight, it smelled like triumph. I strolled to the front desk, my heels clicking on the marble floor in a rhythm that felt like a countdown. The night manager looked up and smiled, recognizing the tired woman in the elegant dress who often booked rooms for visiting investors. I didn't smile back. Instead, I slid the sleek black American Express Centurion card across the polished counter. This was the company card meant for client hospitality and executive emergencies. I figured my situation qualified as both. "I'd like the presidential suite for the week," I said, steady and calm. "Please put the maximum incidental hold on the card. I intend to order plenty of room service." The manager swiped the card. For a moment, I held my breath, wondering if Genevieve had already contacted the bank. But the machine beeped approval. The freeze I'd activated on the operating accounts wouldn't fully take effect until midnight. Until then, I had a window, and I planned to make the most of every second. I took the key card and headed for the elevator, leaving the lobby sounds behind. As the doors closed, enveloping me in silence, my clutch vibrated relentlessly. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left the restaurant, a digital pulse of anger from the people I'd just abandoned. I entered the suite, larger than the first apartment Darius and I had shared. I kicked off my heels, letting them fall where they may on the plush carpet. I poured a glass of water from the crystal pitcher on the sidebar and finally sat on the edge of the enormous king-size bed. I pulled out my phone. I picked up the pitcher from the side table and finally lowered myself onto the edge of the massive king-size bed. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone. The screen erupted with a storm of angry alerts. 43 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and an endless flood of text messages. But I didn't return a single call or reply to any texts. Instead, I hit play on the first voicemail. It was Bianca. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" Her voice pierced the speaker shrill and twisted with spite. "Chad just tried logging into the bank account to pay the bill, and it bounced. You humiliated us in front of the whole restaurant. We're leaving now, and I'm personally tossing every cheap suit you own onto the driveway. If it rains tonight, that's on you. Don't even think about coming back, Naya. We've changed the gate codes. I saved a message proof of illegal eviction and property damage." The next voicemail was from Darius. The background was chaotic wind whipping past the mic, indicating he was outside the restaurant, probably waiting for the valet while his mother yelled in the background. "Nia, pick up. Stop messing around. Mom's hyperventilating. You need to fix this. Call the bank and unfreeze the accounts immediately. We can talk about divorce settlement terms afterward. Maybe we were too harsh. Just come back, fix the accounts, and we'll sort it out. Don't do this to me, Nia. I'm your husband." I saved that one too. He wasn't worried about me or our marriage. He was worried about the money. He was scared the ATM machine he married had finally shut down. I set the phone aside and walked to the heavy oak desk by the window. The Atlanta skyline shimmered with countless lights. A breathtaking view, but all I saw was my laptop screen. I opened it, the glow casting shadows across my face in the dim room. I connected my secure RSA token, the small device generating 6-digit codes needed to access Sterling Properties' financial core. Genevieve thought she was in charge because her name adorned the building. Chad assumed control because he held the title of CFO. But in today's world, the true power lies with whoever holds the admin passwords. I logged into the cloud accounting system. My fingers danced across the keyboard, executing a series of commands I'd memorized years ago. I entered as the super admin, a profile I created when modernizing their outdated bookkeeping system. The dashboard appeared, revealing the company's cash flow in real time. It was hemorrhaging. Chad had been diverting funds from construction loans for months, funneling money into shell accounts to cover his failed crypto bets. I saw it all. The transfers were careless, arrogant, disguised under vague labels like consulting fees and miscellaneous expenses. I navigated to the liquidity accounts, the money reserved for payroll, taxes, and operating costs. I opened a new transfer window. According to the employment contract I drafted 3 years prior, a contract Darius signed without reading, too distracted by football, I was entitled to a severance package equal to 3 years' salary, plus immediate vesting of my equity if terminated without cause. Serving me divorce papers at a birthday dinner, publicly humiliating me, and locking me out of my own home definitely counted as hostile. I ran the numbers. Being excluded from dinner, publicly shamed, and locked out of my own residence unquestionably qualified as acts of hostility. I ran the calculations. The amount was significant enough to deplete their available cash to dangerously low levels. I authorized the transfer, moving funds from Sterling's operating account into a secure escrow account held under my name. This was entirely lawful, contractual, and utterly devastating. The screen flashed a confirmation. Transaction completed. But my work was not done. I opened my email program. In my drafts folder lay a message composed weeks earlier, addressed to the Internal Revenue Service's Criminal Investigation Division. The subject line read, Supplemental Report FY223 Possible Irregularities at Sterling Properties LLC. I attached the documents, PDFs revealing Chad's embezzlement, scanned receipts of Genevieve's personal expenses charged to company accounts, including renovations on her vacation home, the lease agreements for Darius's Range Rover, and falsified contractor invoices Bianca had submitted for services never performed. I hovered over the send button. For 5 years, I had shielded them, correcting their errors, submitting amended tax returns to keep them out of jail, imploring them to comply with the law. I had been the barrier between their greed and the consequences they deserved. Yet they called me a poor investment, labeled me dull, and discarded me like trash. I thought about Darius, recording me, waiting for tears to fall. I thought about Genevieve's smug grin. I clicked send. The email disappeared from my outbox, hurtling through cyberspace straight to federal authorities. It was done. The shield was broken. Now I had become the sword. I closed the laptop and sank back into the leather chair. The rush of adrenaline faded, replaced by deep, bone-tired exhaustion. My phone buzzed on the bed, vibrating against the duvet. They were likely at the gate by now, realizing the codes no longer worked. The accounts were drained, and the woman they dismissed as insignificant had just turned into their downfall. I stood and approached the minibar. I grabbed a small bottle of champagne, popped the cork, and poured a glass. Walking to the window, I raised my glass to the city lights. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered. I took a sip, crisp and cold. Below, the city of Atlanta slept, unaware that one of its most influential families had just vanished from the financial records. I switched off my phone, tossing it onto the pillows. Tonight, I would rest. Tomorrow, the real investigation would begin. While I settled into the quiet of a hotel suite across town, the Sterling mansion echoed with the sounds of premature celebration. I knew this because I had installed their smart home security system 2 years prior, and naturally, I was the only person with the administrative override codes. I opened my laptop and accessed the live feed from the living room camera. The audio was crystal clear. The video streamed in sharp 4K. It was like watching a reality show where the contestants had already lost, but didn't know it yet. Darius and Chad lounged in the main salon, sprawled across the Italian leather couches I had selected. The room was thick with cigar smoke and the clinking of crystal glasses. They had raided the wine cellar, uncorking bottles of vintage Bordeaux that Genevieve had been saving for an anniversary she would probably never celebrate. In the wine cellar, they uncorked bottles of aged Bordeaux that Genevieve had been reserving for an anniversary she probably wouldn't ever get to celebrate. Darius lifted his glass to the light, swirling the deep crimson liquid with the careless gaze of someone drunk. "I've never felt so liberated," he slurred, his tie undone and hanging loosely around his neck. "I mean, I loved her at first, but she was such a burden. Always lecturing about responsibility, scrutinizing every penny I spent. It's like I can finally breathe again." Chad chuckled, resting his feet on the coffee table, something I never allowed. He took a long drag from his cigar, exhaling smoke toward the ceiling. "You dodged a major bullet, man," he said, dripping with arrogance. "That woman was a drag. She never got how people like us roll. She thought she was in charge just because she could use Excel. You need a wife who knows her role, Darius. Someone who respects the sterling legacy, not someone who acts superior." Bianca entered, carrying a tray of appetizers. She probably ordered them from the country club since she didn't know how to operate the oven. She looked flushed and victorious. "Mom's in the study calling all her friends," she chirped, setting the tray down. "She's telling everyone you finally came to your senses and dumped the help. She's already organizing a welcome back to bachelorhood party for next weekend." Darius grinned. "A party? That sounds fantastic. But we need more drinks. This wine's too dry. I want champagne, the fancy kind, the one in the gold bottle." He fumbled for his phone, tapping the screen awkwardly. "I'm ordering 3 cases from the delivery service. Tonight, we drink like royalty." I watched on my screen as he navigated the app. His thumb hovered over the purchase button. He pressed it. A moment passed, then another. Darius frowned and tapped the screen harder. "What the hell?" "What's wrong?" Chad asked lazily. "It says payment declined," Darius muttered. "That's impossible. It's the corporate Amex. The limit's $50,000 a month." Chad snorted, sitting up. "You probably maxed it out on that watch you bought last week. Or maybe your ex-wife reported it stolen just to be spiteful. Typical NIA move. Here, move over. Let a real CFO handle this." Chad pulled out his wallet and produced his own card, a heavy metal card issued to him as chief financial officer. He held it up, catching the light. "This is the platinum business card, Darius. Unlimited spending power. Watch and learn." Chad took Darius's phone and entered his card details. He pressed the button with flair. The silence that followed was priceless. Chad stared at the phone. His smirk faded, replaced by genuine confusion. "It says declined. Contact issuer immediately." "What?" Bianca's voice rose in alarm. "How can both cards be declined? We paid the bill last week. I saw the statement." "Must be a glitch in the app," Chad said, standing and pacing. "It has to be the vendor system, or maybe the bank's fraud alert is too sensitive. I'll call the concierge line. They'll fix this in seconds." I watched Chad dial the number. I put on my headphones to catch the call clearly through the high-fidelity audio. "This is Chad Miller, CFO of Sterling Properties." Chad barked into the phone, his tone dripping with entitlement. "My card was declined on a routine purchase. I want the hold lifted immediately and an apology for this humiliation. My card was rejected during a simple transaction. I demand the hold be removed immediately and an apology for this embarrassment." There was a brief silence. Then the robotic tone gave way to a human voice. But it wasn't the usual flattering assistant. The voice was cold, formal, and detached. "Mr. Miller, for security reasons, I need you to confirm your social security number and the company's tax identification number." Chad recited the numbers irritably. "Look, I don't have time for endless questions. Just reactivate the card." "Mr. Miller," the voice said, its tone final even over the speaker, "I am unable to restore this card's functionality. The account has been flagged." "Flagged for what?" Chad demanded. "I approved the purchase," he insisted. "It has been flagged for liquidation and audit," the representative responded. "All credit lines tied to Sterling Properties LLC are suspended immediately. All assets are frozen pending a forensic investigation." "An audit?" Chad whispered, his face going pale. He glanced at Darius, who was still holding his empty wine glass. "Who authorized an audit?" Chad yelled into the phone. "We didn't approve anything." "The authorization came from the primary account holder and majority shareholder," the representative replied tersely. "Good night, Mr. Miller." The call ended abruptly. Chad lowered the phone slowly, looking as if he'd seen a ghost. "What's happening?" Darius asked, suddenly serious. "What did they say?" "They said the accounts are frozen." Chad replied, voice trembling. They said the majority shareholder ordered a forensic audit. At that moment, Genevieve entered the room, radiant and holding a glass of sherry. I just spoke with the senator's wife, she announced. She's delighted you're single again, Darius. She has a niece recently graduated from Switzerland, much better pedigree than Naya. Mom, Darius said, standing unsteadily, the credit cards aren't working. The bank says the accounts are frozen. Genevieve stopped, her smile vanishing. Nonsense. I used a card an hour ago to pay the caterer. They're frozen, Mom, Chad said, panic rising in his voice. They said the majority shareholder ordered it. Genevieve let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. That's impossible. I'm the majority shareholder. I own this company. My father built it and I run it. This must be a computer glitch. She strode to the antique desk in the corner where their landline sat, a direct line to their private wealth manager, Arthur, who had handled the Sterling finances for 2 decades. She grabbed the receiver and dialed, pressing the speaker button so everyone could hear Arthur's apology. Arthur, this is Genevieve, she snapped. There appears to be some incompetence in your credit department. My son and son-in-law are trying to make a purchase and are told the accounts are frozen. Fix this immediately. There was a long pause before Arthur spoke. His voice was weary and oddly distant. Hello, Genevieve. I can't resolve this. The order came from compliance, and frankly, I'm powerless. What do you mean, powerless? Genevieve shouted. I'm your biggest client. I write your paychecks. Unfreeze my funds, Arthur, or you're out. You are no longer my biggest client, Genevieve, Arthur said quietly. Not anymore, and you don't write the checks. You haven't signed a check that cleared in 3 years. What are you talking about? Genevieve demanded, clutching the desk's edge. I haven't signed a check that cleared in 3 years. What are you saying? Genevieve snapped, gripping the edge of the desk tightly. You need to review your corporate charter, Genevieve, Arthur replied. Do you recall the tax benefits from 3 years back? The minority business enterprise grant you were so eager to secure, the one that mandated 51% ownership by a minority woman? I leaned closer to my laptop screen, watching the color drain from Genevieve's face. That day was etched in my memory. She was desperate. The company was drowning in debt Chad had amassed. The government contract was their only lifeline. She came to me, pleading for me to sign the documents. It was just a formality, she said, a piece of paper for the government. We would draft a side agreement to restore my control. But she never wrote that side letter. She was too complacent, too arrogant. She assumed I was too ignorant to grasp what I was signing. She saw me as a loyal dog who would never bite the hand that fed it, even if that hand was hurting me. I know what I signed, Genevieve stammered. It was a nominee agreement. Naya is just a figurehead. She holds the shares in trust for me. No, Arthur said, his disappointment palpable. I went over the paperwork tonight, Genevieve. The transfer was absolute. It had to be. To qualify for the federal grant, you gave 51% of Sterling properties to Naya Sterling. Unconditionally, irrevocably, legally, she owns the company. The room fell silent. The only sounds were the refrigerator's low hum and the heavy breath of 4 people coming to terms with their ruined futures. Genevieve collapsed into the chair. But she's my daughter-in-law. She signed divorce papers tonight. She's gone. Yes, Arthur added. And before leaving, she used her majority shareholder rights to freeze all assets pending a comprehensive investigation into financial discrepancies. She flagged transactions from the last 5 years, Genevieve, the renovation on your lake house, Chad's crypto withdrawals, everything. The word audit hung in the air like a guillotine's blade. Arthur, you have to help us, Genevieve whispered, her voice shaking. If they inspect the books, if the IRS reviews the records, I can't assist you, Arthur said coldly. I've already received a subpoena. Genevieve, I have to hand over the files. Don't call me again. My lawyer advised cutting all contact. The line went dead with a click. The busy signal echoed sharply through the luxurious room, a harsh, rhythmic tone sounding like a ticking clock. Chad sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. We're going to jail, he groaned. She knows about the shell companies. She knows about the offshore accounts. She's an accountant, for God's sake. She knows all the secrets. Darius looked at his mother. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't hand her the company. Genevieve stared at the phone receiver as if it had turned into a serpent. I thought she was naive, she whispered. I thought she was just grateful to be here. I thought she'd obey me. Bianca began to sob. What about my allowance? She cried. What about my lease? How will I afford my trainer? Genevieve rose slowly. Her face was pale. She looked suddenly aged. The energy and arrogance that usually carried her had disappeared, replaced by a frightened, vulnerable woman. We need a lawyer, she said, her voice breaking. The best lawyer in Atlanta will sue her, will claim she deceived me. A lawyer, she whispered, her voice trembling. The top attorney in Atlanta. Will take her to court. Will accuse her of deceiving me. Will allege she misappropriated the shares. With what funds? Mom Chad asked, looking up, his eyes bloodshot and wild. We have no money. The accounts are frozen. We can't even afford a retainer. We can't even fill the cars with gas. Genevieve's gaze swept the room, darting nervously from the lavish furniture to the paintings on the walls. We have assets, she pleaded. This house, the jewelry. The house belongs to the company, Chad replied flatly. Nia owns the company. Nia owns the house. Genevieve emitted a sound that was part scream, part sob. She grabbed a crystal vase from the desk and flung it across the room. It shattered against the fireplace, sending glass shards scattering everywhere. She did this intentionally, Genevieve screamed. She planned it. At dinner, she smiled and thanked me, all the while she had her finger on the trigger. I closed my laptop. I had seen enough. They were beginning to grasp the extent of their ruin. They were realizing that the woman they'd ridiculed, treated like a servant, served divorce papers that was in fact their destroyer. I poured the last of the champagne into my glass. Tonight's performance was over. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. Tomorrow, I would meet with the FBI. But for now, I rested peacefully, knowing that in the mansion across town, no one was sleeping. The ringtone shattered the quiet of the presidential suite like an alarm. It was 2 a.m. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in a plush white robe, watching the traffic flow along Peachtree Road below. The champagne bottle was half empty, and for the first time in 5 years, my shoulders relaxed, free of tension. I looked at the caller ID. It was Darius. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I wanted him to sit with that silence. I wanted him to feel the gap between us, a gap no longer measured by distance, but by influence. Finally, I swiped to answer and put the call on speaker, placing the phone on the glass table beside my champagne glass. Hello, Darius, I said coolly, my tone almost indifferent, the voice I reserved for IRS auditors and difficult clients. Nia. His voice was slurred and frantic. He was drunk. I could hear it in the garbled consonants and ragged breathing. Nia, baby, you've got to stop this. It's not funny anymore. Mom's losing it. She's throwing things. She broke the antique vase in the hallway. You have to fix this. Call the bank. Tell them it was a mistake. I took a slow sip of champagne. The bubbles were sharp and cold on my tongue. There's no mistake, Darius, I said. The bank is just following protocol. When the majority shareholder suspects fraud and embezzlement, it's their fiduciary responsibility to freeze assets. You know this. You went to business school, or at least you paid for the degree. Don't give me that corporate jargon, he yelled, and I heard the phone shift in his hands. You're not the majority shareholder. You're the accountant. The help, Nia. You signed a paper 3 years ago to help Mom secure a government contract. That's all. Just a technicality. I laughed, a low, dry sound. A technicality, I repeated. Is that what they told you? Is that what Genevieve told herself so she could sleep at night while treating me like dirt? They told you? Is that what Genevieve convinced herself of to sleep peacefully at night while she treated me like I meant nothing? I leaned closer to the phone, my voice dropping to a whisper far more threatening than any shout. Let me jog your memory, Darius, because you seem to have conveniently forgotten. Let's rewind 3 years. Do you recall where we were? We were in the mansion's library. Chad was sobbing on the couch, having just lost $2 million of the company's funds in a crypto scam he found on Twitter. I heard Darius's breath catch. Of course, he remembered. It was the only moment Chad looked truly human, terrified of going to jail. The company was on the brink of collapse. Darius, I pressed on relentlessly. Bankruptcy was just weeks away. Payroll checks were about to bounce. The construction loans were being called in. Genevieve was hysterical. She was staring down the end of the Sterling legacy. She was on the verge of public disgrace. And who did she turn to? Her brilliant son, her genius son-in-law? No, she turned to me. Darius whimpered. Nia, please, she pleaded with me. Darius. She dropped to her knees on that Persian rug. I can still see the marks on her knees. She begged me to rescue them. She needed a minority woman at the helm to qualify for emergency relief funds and the new city contracts. She needed a face like mine to clean up the chaos Chad had created. So she transferred the stock, I said, letting the words hang heavy in the damp night air. 51% majority control. It was a nominee agreement, Darius shouted, his voice cracking. It was only meant to be temporary. You were supposed to return it once the audit was complete. Supposed to, I scoffed. That's the thing about legal papers, Darius. Intentions don't count. Signatures do. Words have power. Genevieve was too stingy to hire an outside lawyer to draft a detailed trust agreement. She didn't want anyone to know how close to collapse she was. So she downloaded a generic transfer of ownership form from the internet. She thought she was clever. She thought I was naive. She believed that because I loved you, I'd just hand it back whenever she ordered. But she made a mistake, Darius. She signed a full, irrevocable transfer of assets. No side agreements, no expiration date, no trust documents. Just a deed of transfer filed with the Secretary of State granting 51% of Sterling Properties LLC to Nia Sterling. Silence filled the line, thick and suffocating. I tried to warn her, I said, my voice softening just a touch not from sympathy, but from marveling at the irony. I told her the terms were too broad. I told her she was handing over the kingdom. Do you know what she said to me? Darius didn't respond. She told me to shut up and sign, I said. She said I should consider myself lucky to have my name on any Sterling document. She said I should be grateful for her trust. So I signed. I saved your company. I secured the grant. I corrected Chad's accounts, and I waited. Waited for what? Darius whispered. Waited for you to treat me like a wife, I said. Waited for Genevieve to treat me like an equal. Waited for a single word of thanks. But it never came. Instead, I got insults. Exclusion from family photos. Mockery for my background. And tonight, divorce papers. Speaking of which, I said, shifting tone to a deadly cheerful edge. I must thank you for those papers, Darius. Really? With a voice edged in a dangerously cheerful tone, I said, for that, Darius, I must express my gratitude for those documents. Really? They were the missing link. What do you mean? He replied, his voice weary and defeated. Go check the papers, Darius. I left them on the table. Look in the asset division section. Genevieve boasted about how airtight it was. I heard footsteps, then the rustling of papers. In the background, Genevieve shouted, demanding to know who he was speaking to. Paragraph 4, Section C, I instructed. Read it aloud. I sipped my champagne as I waited. All marital assets, Darius's voice shook as he read. All marital assets and business interests shall be divided strictly according to the legal title and ownership records filed with the state at the time of filing. He faltered. Silence fell. Do you grasp what that means, Darius? I asked. He choked up. It means, he began. It means your mother drafted a prenup and divorce settlement that protects the legal owner of the assets. I explained. She wrote it to shield herself from me, believing she owned everything. She thought I was just after her money, so she included a clause that we only receive what's legally in our names, but she forgot who actually owns the company. I held up a document. This proves I keep what's mine. 51% of Sterling Properties belongs to me, legally and irrevocably. Thanks to the divorce papers she wrote, I don't even have to share it with you. It's not marital property. It's mine alone, acquired through business transfer and backed by your own legal filings. You can't do this, Darius shouted. It's our family legacy. My grandfather built it. Your grandfather built it. I nodded. Your mother destroyed it. Chad plundered it. And I rescued it. Now I own it. I stood and moved to the balcony's edge, gazing down at the city lights below. You wanted me gone, Darius. You craved your freedom. You wanted to be a bachelor again, free from a nagging wife talking budgets. Well, congratulations, you're free. You're single and broke, Nia. Wait, he begged, and we can fix this. I'll fire Chad. I'll put mom in a care home. I'll do anything you want. Come back. I love you. I closed my eyes. The saddest part was he probably believed it. But his love was as cheap and performative as his business skills, ultimately worthless. You don't love me, Darius, I said. You love the lifestyle I provided. You love the safety net I created. But that net is gone. You're falling without a net. I'm hanging up now. No, don't hang up, he yelled. What are we going to do? The cards don't work. We're out of cash. I suggest you ask Genevieve, I replied. She seems convinced she's the smartest person here. Maybe she can conjure some money. Or maybe Chad still has some crypto stashed in that secret wallet he thinks I don't know about. A secret wallet? Darius's voice shifted from fear to anger. Oh yes, I said, about $200,000. He skimmed it from the Buckhead condo renovation budget. You might want to ask him about that before the FBI shows up. FBI? Darius whispered. I glanced at my watch. 2:15 a.m. I had sent the email at midnight. I named Darius in my whistleblower protection report. I confessed to my role in signing the falsified tax returns Genevieve forced me to prepare. And I handed over all evidence of Chad's embezzlement and Genevieve's tax fraud. I struck a deal immunity in exchange for testimony. I handed over all the proof of Chad's embezzlement and Genevieve's tax evasion. I struck a deal immunity in return for my testimony. You went straight to the authorities, he sighed. You turned your own family in. Ex-family, I corrected, and I didn't put them behind bars. Their own greed did. I simply revealed the truth. Goodbye, Darius. I ended the call. I didn't block his number. I wanted to watch the alerts come through. I wanted to witness the panic unravel in real-time text. I walked back into the bedroom and sat on the bed. The room was silent except for the steady hum of the air conditioner. A strange feeling stirred in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was relief. For 3 years, I had carried their secrets, their lies. The burden of their failures weighed down on me while they attacked me for not acting quickly enough. I lay back on the pillows. The ceiling was high and painted a gentle cream, like a blank canvas. Tomorrow, the forensic audit would officially begin. Tomorrow, the marshals would likely arrive at the estate to seize the assets. Tomorrow, my name would be in the headlines, not as the discarded wife, but as the woman who dismantled a corrupt empire. But for now, I was just Naya, and for the first time in 10 years, I owed nothing to anyone. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I slept without nightmares of drowning. The conference room on the 45th floor of Henderson and Associates smelled of polished mahogany and intimidation. It was designed to make you feel insignificant. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of Atlanta, a city Genevieve Sterling thought she owned. But from this height, the cars looked like toys, and the people were invisible. I arrived exactly at 9 a.m., wearing a sharp crimson suit I had purchased with my own money 5 years ago. Red is a color of power, a signal of warning, the color of blood in the water. Genevieve sat at the head of the massive oval table. She had clearly spent the morning trying to fix her appearance, but the stress around her mouth ran deep. Darius sat to her right, looking like a man awaiting sentencing. Bianca nervously scrolled on her phone, probably checking if her credit cards had been reactivated yet. And then there was Chad. He sat with one ankle resting over the opposite knee, showing off his Italian loafers. He looked surprisingly confident for a man who had just discovered his company was bankrupt. But that was Chad carrying the undeserved confidence of a mediocre white man who had always failed upward. He noticed me enter and gave a tight, pitying smile. Mr. Henderson, the firm's senior partner, stood up. He was a man who charged $800 an hour, with silver hair, a spray-on tan, and a reputation for burying his clients' enemies under mountains of legal paperwork. Mrs. Sterling, please have a seat, Henderson said, gesturing to the single chair across from him. My clients have retained me to address the serious breach of trust and potential criminal misappropriation of assets concerning Sterling properties. I sat down. Placing my leather portfolio on the table, I didn't open it. I folded my hands and met Henderson's gaze. I'm listening, I said. Henderson cleared his throat and opened a thick folder. We are aware of the documents signed 3 years ago transferring shares into your name. He opened a hefty folder and said, "We acknowledge the document from 3 years ago that transferred the shares into your name. However, we intend to argue that this transfer was done under pressure and was understood as a nominal arrangement for regulatory reasons, freezing the company's accounts and moving funds into an escrow account. We believe you have committed a breach of fiduciary duty and theft." Genevieve nodded emphatically. "She stole my company," she whispered fiercely. "She deceived me." Henderson raised his hand to quiet her. "We are ready to file an injunction immediately," he went on. "We will also pursue a civil lawsuit for misappropriation of funds, but Mrs. Sterling is willing to offer you an exit. If you return the funds right away, resign your role, and transfer the shares back, we won't press embezzlement charges. You'll even get to keep the severance package as outlined in your original contract minus legal costs, naturally." I looked at them. They truly believed this would intimidate me. They thought fancy language and expensive suits would sway me. Before I could reply, Chad leaned forward, unable to resist showing off his superiority. "Let me explain this to you, Naya," he said, dripping with condescension. "Sure, you're good with numbers, but corporate law and high finance are a whole different game. You're in way over your head." He stood and walked to the whiteboard like he was about to give a lecture. "What you did is called piercing the corporate veil." He used the term entirely wrong. "You mix personal and company assets. By moving that money, you're basically admitting you can't manage a complex business. These accounts are part of a sophisticated leverage structure. Freezing them triggered liquidity covenants with our lenders. You're going to bankrupt the very company you're trying to steal." He chuckled and shook his head. "I get it. You saw the big numbers and got excited. It's a lot of money for someone like you. But managing wealth takes pedigree. It demands understanding the subtleties of business relationships. You can't just lock the doors and keep the cash. That's not how the real world operates." I watched him. The way he waved his hands, glanced at Darius for approval, smirked at me. He was enjoying himself, thinking he was teaching rocket science to a child. "So here's the deal," Chad said, leaning on the table, looming over me. "You sign the papers, hand back the keys, and maybe I'll put in a good word for you. Maybe we won't wreck your credit so badly you can't rent an apartment. You walk away, Nia. Go back to doing taxes for small businesses. Leave empire building to the men who know what they're doing." He sat down, looking pleased. Genevieve looked victorious. Darius just stared at the floor. I paused, letting the silence hang until Henderson shifted uneasily. "Are you done, Chad?" I asked quietly. Chad rolled his eyes. "Yeah, I'm done." "Sign the papers." I reached for my portfolio, unzipping it slowly. The sound echoed in the quiet room. I pulled out a single stack of documents, clipped together. I didn't look at Chad. I looked at Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my tone professional and icy. Setting the scene together. I avoided looking at Chad and instead fixed my gaze on Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," I began, my voice crisp and formal. "As an officer of the court, you are obligated to report any knowledge of ongoing criminal activity by your clients, especially cases involving money laundering and wire fraud." Henderson's expression darkened. "Pardon me." I slid a thick packet of documents across the sleek table until it stopped right before him. "You brought up high finance, Chad," I said, turning towards my brother-in-law. "Let's discuss the West Side Revitalization Project." Chad stiffened. His previously smug complexion turned pale. "That was a $20 million government grant allocated for affordable housing." I addressed the room, but kept my stare locked on Chad. "This project aimed to build apartments for low-income families in the neighborhood where I grew up. It was Sterling Properties' flagship venture last year." I glanced at Genevieve. "You recall that project, don't you, Genevieve? You cut the ribbon, delivered a heartfelt speech about giving back to the community, and even shed tears on the local news." Genevieve appeared puzzled. "Yes, it was a beautiful event. What does this have to do with you stealing my company?" I pointed to the documents before Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, if you turn to page 3, you'll find a series of wire transfers authorized by your client, Chad Miller, acting as CFO. These transactions, totaling $2, $3 million, were sent to a consulting firm called Zenith Solutions, registered in the Cayman Islands. That's a legitimate vendor. Chad burst out, standing abruptly. They provided architectural consulting. Sit down, Chad, I snapped sharply. He obeyed. Zenith Solutions, I went on, has no architects on staff. According to the incorporation documents I obtained from the Cayman Registry, Zenith Solutions employs only one individual, a woman named Svetlana, who coincidentally shares an address with an online cryptocurrency gambling platform. Darius's gaze lifted, eyes wide. Crypto, he whispered. I turned the page for Henderson. Here are the bank statements, I said, tracing the money's path. $2 million flowed from the affordable housing grant to Zenith Solutions. From there, it was moved into a personal cryptocurrency wallet. And do you know what that wallet was used for? I looked directly at Bianca. It wasn't used for architecture, Bianca. It wasn't for business. I pulled out a glossy photo and slid it across the table. It depicted a bright yellow Lamborghini Urus. He purchased a $300,000 luxury SUV and leased a penthouse apartment in Midtown for a 22-year-old Instagram influencer named Kiki. Bianca emitted a choked sound, clutching the photo, her hands trembling. Chad, she cried out, you told me that car was a company lease. You said you were working late at the office. It's a lie, Chad shouted, his voice rising in panic. She fabricated these documents. She's trying to frame me. Mr. Henderson, examine the metadata, I said steadily. Check the IP addresses, the authorization signatures, they all trace back to Chad. He embezzled $2 million from a federal housing grant. That's not just theft, Mr. Henderson. That's wire fraud, money laundering, and because it's federal funds, it's a direct path to federal prison with mandatory minimum sentences. I leaned in, eyes fixed on Chad, now drenched in sweat. You tried to explain finance to me, Chad, insisting I didn't grasp the complexities of business. But I believe you're the one confused. Forensic accounting is all about those very details. Understanding the intricacies of business isn't easy, but honestly, I think you're the one who's lost. Forensic accounting zeroes in on those exact details. It's about uncovering the tiny traces people like you leave behind, blinded by arrogance, believing no one's paying attention. I tracked every single dollar. Turning to Henderson, who was scanning the documents with growing dread, I said, Mr. Henderson, I've already compiled a digital file with all this proof. The embezzlement, the fake invoices, the tax fraud schemes Genevieve approved to cover the shortfalls. Genevieve gasped, I had no idea. Chad said it was just creative bookkeeping. Ignorance doesn't protect you when you sign the returns. Genevieve, I replied, you signed them. I warned you not to. I told you these deductions were illegal, but you insisted I follow orders, so I did. I prepared them, and I kept copies of every memo warning you it was fraud. Standing up, I adjusted my skirt. Mr. Henderson, I continued, you wanted me to transfer the shares. You threatened legal action. But here's the truth. I'm the majority shareholder of a company that's now a crime scene. The only reason I haven't involved the FBI yet is to see if you have the brains to save yourself. Save myself? Henderson asked, voice tight. Exactly, I said. Right now, you're defending a criminal operation. If you keep backing them, if you try to intimidate a whistleblower, that's me, you become part of the conspiracy. You risk losing your license. You could face jail time alongside them. The room fell utterly silent. Even Bianca stopped crying. All eyes were on the lawyer, the predator they hired to devour me. Henderson closed the file, rose, and grabbed his briefcase. Mrs. Sterling, he said, looking at Genevieve with pure contempt, I am ending my representation of you and your family immediately. A formal letter will follow to sever our firm's ties with all Sterling entities. Do not contact me again. What about the lawsuit? Chad stammered. The injunction? There will be no lawsuit, Henderson said. If I were you, Mr. Miller, I'd save every cent for a criminal defense lawyer. You'll need one experience with federal indictments. He glanced at me and nodded, a shark's nod of respect to another. Mrs. Sterling, he said, good luck. Then he exited, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. I was left alone with them. The silence weighed down the room, thick with fear. Chad slumped in his chair, staring at the table. Bianca gazed at the Lamborghini photo. Darius looked at me, a mix of awe and dread. And Genevieve, the matriarch, the queen, was shaking. You wouldn't, she whispered. You wouldn't send us to prison. We're family. I picked up my portfolio and zipped it closed. Family, I echoed, savoring the word. Family doesn't hand you divorce papers on your birthday, Genevieve. Family doesn't belittle your roots. Family doesn't steal from the poor to buy sports cars for their mistresses. I headed for the door. I have a meeting, I said, glancing at my watch. In 1 hour. With who? Darius asked softly. With the FBI, I lied. Or maybe it was the truth in disguise. I hadn't called them yet, but the phone was in my hand. You have 1 hour, I said, 1 hour to choose take the hard road or the deadly one. I walked out without looking back. 1 hour, I declared. 60 minutes to decide, choose the difficult path or the fatal one. Without glancing back, I exited. I heard Chad begin to sob. It was a pitiful noise, yet to me, it sounded like a melody. Back inside the hotel suite, I topped off my glass with the remaining champagne and expanded the window on my laptop. The live feed from the Sterling Mansion's living room was crystal clear. It felt like watching a silent movie of a disaster unfolding. They had just returned from the attorney's office. The drive must have been unbearable. I pictured the silence inside that luxury SUV, the kind of silence heavy enough to suffocate. They entered the living room, and for a moment no one moved. Standing there in their fine attire, they gazed at the ruins of their existence. The room was elegant, filled with artwork and bespoke furniture, but the atmosphere was poisonous. It was a tomb of avarice. Genevieve was the first to break the stillness. She approached the sideboard, poured herself a drink, her hand trembling so much the crystal decanter clinked against the glass. She drained it in one swallow. Then she slowly turned to face Chad. Chad tried to make himself small on the couch. His usual confidence had vanished. The arrogance that typically radiated from him like heat waves was replaced by the clammy sweat of a man trapped with no escape. You stole from me, Genevieve said softly, almost a whisper, but the high-quality audio caught every word. You embezzled $2 million from the Affordable Housing Fund. Chad looked up, eyes darting around as if searching for a way out. Genevieve, it was an investment, he stammered. I planned to repay it. I just needed liquidity to leverage a market position. It was a sure bet. I was doing it for the family. For the family, Genevieve echoed. She stepped toward him, her movements slow and purposeful. You bought a Lamborghini, Chad. You rented an apartment for a woman younger than my daughter. Was that for the family too? It was a temporary use of funds, Chad insisted, rising to his feet, trying to reclaim some stature, some control. Look, Nia is distorting the story. She's manipulating the numbers. We can fix this. I just need access to the offshore accounts. If you give me the codes, I can shuffle assets around and plug the gap before the audit digs deeper. Genevieve halted right before him. She looked up, shorter by a foot, but in that moment she seemed enormous. There are no offshore accounts, you fool, she shouted. Nia froze every single one. There's nothing to move. You spend the money. You spend the grant money. Do you understand what that means? When the feds arrive, they're not only coming for the company, they're coming for me. They'll assume I authorized it. She raised her hand and struck him. It wasn't a dramatic slap. It was a fierce, heavy blow that echoed through the speakers. Chad staggered back, clutching his cheek. His eyes widened in disbelief. Bianca screamed, rushing to her husband's side. She grabbed Chad's arm, glaring fiercely at her mother. Stop it! You can't hit him! He's under stress. He made a mistake. A mistake? Genevieve scoffed, a sound completely void of humor. A mistake is forgetting a receipt. Bianca, embezzling $2 million is a crime. He's destroyed us. He handed Nia a loaded weapon. It's not his fault, Bianca yelled, her face twisting into a mask of entitlement. It's Darius's fault. Context, a loaded weapon. It's not his doing, Bianca shouted, her face contorting with entitlement. This is Darius's fault. She whirled around and jabbed a manicured finger at her brother, who stood near the fireplace, seeming to wish the floor would swallow him whole. This falls on you, Darius, she yelled. You married her. You brought that viper into our home. You were supposed to keep her in line. Me? Darius replied, his voice fragile. How is this my responsibility? Chad's the one who took the money. Because you're weak, Bianca snapped. You let her take control. You allowed her access to the finances. You were meant to be the head of this family, Darius. You should have kept her in check, but you were too busy golfing while she ran the show. If you'd been a true husband, she wouldn't have had the power to do this. You let a girl from the gutter destroy our legacy because you were too lazy to read the contracts you signed. I watched Darius flinch as if struck. It was the harsh truth, and it stung. He looked at his mother, hoping she would defend him, tell Bianca to stop. But Genevieve just regarded him with cold, hard eyes. She agreed. In her mind, this was Darius's failure. He hadn't controlled his asset. "I'm going to fix this," Darius muttered. He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to talk to her. She loves me. I know she does. She's just hurt. I can calm her down." He turned and left the living room, heading toward the terrace. He needed privacy. He needed to work his charm. I watched him disappear from my laptop screen. Moments later, my phone lit up on the bed beside me. Incoming call. Darius Sterling. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to taste the desperation choking him. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a text. "Nia, please answer. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up today. Mom pushed me to sign the divorce papers. I didn't want to. I love you. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you ask. Just please stop the audit. Please come home." I read the message and felt a wave of sickness. It was also predictable. The gaslighting, the blame shifting, the hollow promises. He was rewriting the story, casting himself as a victim of his mother's ambition rather than a willing participant in my disgrace. He thought he could charm me once more. He thought I was the same woman who forgave him for forgetting our anniversary, wasting our savings on a pointless boat, leaving me alone at parties while he schmoozed with socialites. But that woman was gone. She died the moment she signed those papers. I picked up my phone. I didn't reply. Words were pointless with men like Darius. He'd just twist them. He needed proof he couldn't deny, something irrefutable. I opened my encrypted folder. I scrolled past financial records, tax returns, and fraud evidence. I found the folder labeled Miami. I selected a single photo. It was taken a month ago outside the W Hotel in South Beach. The resolution was sharp enough to see sweat on his forehead. Darius stood by the valley stand. He wasn't alone. His arms were wrapped around a young woman. She was 22, his executive assistant, the one he claimed was just a recent college graduate in need of guidance. In the photo, his hand rested low on her hip, pulling her close. Her head was thrown back in laughter. They looked like a couple deeply in love. Her hip brushed against mine, drawing me nearer. Her head tilted back in laughter. They appeared as a couple utterly enamored with each other. They seemed like two souls carefree and lost in their own world. I had engaged a private detective to capture that image. The instant I noticed the flight charge on the company card, I had held onto it, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for him to deceive me about his loyalty. I attached the photo to our message thread and sent a straightforward note. "Don't put on a show for me, Darius. I am not your mother. I see through your act. And by the way, you might want to inform your assistant that her position is terminated immediately. As the majority shareholder, I'm eliminating unnecessary expenses." I pressed send. I glanced back at the laptop screen. Darius stood on the terrace, bathed in the glow of the outdoor security lights. He was staring down at his phone. I watched his body stiffen. He gazed at the screen for a long moment, then he sagged against the railing. He dropped the phone onto the patio table. Covering his face with his hands, he slid down until he was crouched on the ground. He wasn't weeping over losing me. He was crying because he had been exposed. He was crying because he realized I had been watching him all along. My phone buzzed again. Another text from him. "How long have you known?" I replied immediately. "Since the day you booked the flight. I installed a keylogger on your laptop last year, Darius. I've seen every email, every chat. The jewelry you bought her with the bonus I earned for you. I know it all." I saw him read the message. He stood abruptly and looked around frantically as if expecting me to be lurking nearby. He glanced up at the security camera mounted in the patio corner. His eyes locked onto the lens. I waved at the screen, even though he couldn't see me. "Goodbye, Darius," I typed. "Enjoy the bachelor life. I hear it's costly." He stormed back inside the house. I switched the camera feed to the living room. He entered looking like a man who had just faced his own doom. "She knows," he whispered, his voice hollow. "She knows about Ashley." "Who is Ashley?" Genevieve asked, snapping her head up. "My assistant," Darius said, sinking into the ottoman. "Nia has the photos." "She's been monitoring my computer. She knows everything, Mom. She's not coming back." Genevieve closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. "Of course she knows," she murmured. "She's the one footing the bills. She probably saw the charges before you even made them." "You're a fool, Darius. A sloppy, careless fool." And just like that, the alliance shattered. They turned against each other. The room erupted in yelling. Bianca screamed about how Darius had destroyed her life. Chad shouted that Darius's affair caused Nia's bitterness, ignoring his own theft. Genevieve yelled at all of them, lamenting that she was surrounded by fools. I muted the volume. I no longer needed to hear their words. The images spoke volumes. It was the downfall of a dynasty unfolding in real time. I closed the laptop. One last call remained, one final piece of the trap to set the lawyer. Genevieve would contact her attorney. First thing in the morning, she would try to frame me, claim I stole the shares. I had to ensure her lawyer understood exactly whom he represented. I had to guarantee that when she entered that office, she walked into a room devoid of allies. I grabbed my phone and dialed. It was late, but lawyers like Mr. I stepped into a room where I had no allies. I reached for my phone and made the call. It was late, but attorneys like Mr. Henderson always answered for clients who could afford their fees, and I had the funds. As the majority shareholder of Sterling Properties, I was about to become his most challenging case. I waited until midday the following day to reach out. I wanted them to feel the pressure. I wanted them to spend the morning staring at their frozen bank accounts and the empty driveway where their repossessed vehicles once stood. Seated in the living area of the presidential suite, my laptop open and a room service breakfast of eggs Benedict and fresh fruit untouched beside me, I checked my reflection on the webcam. My hair was flawless, my makeup impeccable. I wore a white silk blouse that appeared innocent but came with a hefty price tag. I looked every bit the CEO. I looked like a winner. I started the video call to the main line in the Sterling Mansion library. It rang once before the screen filled instantly. They were all there, gathered around the computer like survivors clinging to a lifeboat. The contrast between us was stark. I appeared fresh, relaxed, and affluent. They looked battle-worn. Genevieve wore the same clothes as the day before, but they were wrinkled and stained. Her hair, typically held rigid by hairspray, was flat and messy. Chad had removed his tie, yet he still looked suffocated. His face was blotchy, his eyes bloodshot. Bianca sat curled in a chair, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly, and Darius looked like a broken man. "Good morning, everyone," I said brightly. "I hope you all slept well." Genevieve flinched at my voice. "You monster," she rasped. "You ruined us. The marshals came, Nia. They took the cars. They clamped the Mercedes. The neighbors saw everything. Do you know how humiliating that is?" I took a sip of orange juice. "Humiliation is an interesting thing, Genevieve," I replied. "It depends on your viewpoint. I found it humiliating when you served me divorce papers in front of the waiter, but I moved past it. I imagine you'll move past losing your G-Wagon too." "Listen to me, Nia," Chad cut in, his voice rough. "We fired Henderson. We're ready to negotiate. You want money, right? Everyone wants money. We can sell the vacation homes. We can get you cash. Just stop the audit. Call off the investigation." I leaned back, fingers steepled. "I don't want your vacation homes, Chad. They're already mine. They're company property. I don't want your cash because you don't have any. You're drowning in debt, facing liabilities, and there's a federal probe looming." "What do you want then?" Darius asked, desperation in his voice. "Just tell us." I looked at them, seeing the fear in their eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy. But then I remembered the divorce papers, the years of insults, how they belittled me to make themselves feel superior. "I want an apology," I stated. They blinked. "An apology?" Bianca asked, her voice trembling. "That's right," I continued. "Not just any apology. I want a public one. I want them to restore my reputation. You've spent the last 5 years telling everyone in Atlanta that I was a charity case, that I was a gold digger, that I was lucky to be included. I leaned toward the camera, locking eyes with Genevieve. I want you to tell the truth. Genevieve narrowed her eyes. How? I leaned in toward the camera, meeting Genevieve's gaze. I need you to be honest. Genevieve's eyes narrowed. How do you expect that? I want a celebration, I said. Chad frowned. A celebration? Yes, Chad. A farewell event, a ceremony marking the handover of power. I want you to book the grand ballroom at the St. Regis for this Saturday night. Invite everyone, the partners, the investors, city council members, the media, everyone who holds influence in this city. Genevieve eyed me warily. What's supposed to happen at this party? You're going to deliver a speech, I said. You'll stand before all your acquaintances and express your gratitude to me. You'll admit that I rescued the company. You'll acknowledge that Sterling Properties owes its survival to me. You'll offer an apology for the confusion surrounding the divorce. And you'll publicly announce a smooth, friendly transfer of leadership. You'll say you're stepping down for health reasons and that you fully endorse my vision moving forward. Chad leaned closer to the screen. And if we do this, what's in it for us? If we hold this event and show proper respect, I replied, I won't forward the final evidence file to the FBI on Monday morning. Chad exhaled deeply. You're going to drop the investigation? I'll hold back the specific file that directly implicates you in wire fraud, I said carefully. I'll allow you to resign quietly. The family can save face. You won't end up behind bars, Chad. You'll simply vanish. Genevieve glanced at Chad. I saw the wheels turning in her mind. She was a fighter. She was already crafting the story she would tell herself. She figured a party was manageable. A speech was just words. If she could get me in the room, if she could lower my defenses, she could find a way out. She thought I wanted a victory lap because I was vain, that I needed my ego stroked. She had no clue I was after a list of witnesses. Fine, Genevieve said, her voice regaining some of its old strength. We'll do it. We'll throw your party. St. Regis Saturday night, black tie. We'll invite everyone. I added, and you'll be gracious. No snide remarks, no backhanded compliments. You'll treat me like the savior of this family because that's exactly what I am. If I detect even a hint of disrespect, the deal's off and I send the email. We understand, Darius, Nia said. We'll do it. Just please promise me you won't send it. I promise I won't send it until after the party, I replied. Wait, Chad said sharply. You said you wouldn't send it at all. I said I wouldn't send it on Monday, I corrected smoothly, and I won't as long as the party goes exactly as planned. Do we have an agreement? They exchanged glances, knowing they were cornered. They nodded. Good, I said. I'll see you Saturday. Oh, and Genevieve, wear something elegant. It's going to be a night to remember. I ended the call and sat in silence, staring at the dark screen. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. They'd taken the bait. They thought they'd earned a reprieve. They believed they'd bought themselves time. Chad was probably already plotting how to move hidden assets over the weekend. Genevieve was likely drafting a speech that sounded contrite, but subtly undercut me. They thought they knew the game. They thought the stakes were money and reputation. They didn't realize the rules had changed. I stood up and walked over to the window. Everything was on the line, fortune and honor. They had no idea the game had shifted. I rose and moved toward the window. From this vantage, the St. Regis stood tall. A monumental emblem of wealth and influence. It was the ideal backdrop. 4 decades earlier, Genevieve had held her wedding celebration there. It was the venue for her charity fundraisers. It was the heart of her universe. And on Saturday evening, I was going to set it ablaze. I wasn't postponing my visit to the FBI until Monday. I'd already been there this morning. I met Agent Miller at a cafe in Midtown at 7 a.m. I handed over everything, the hard drives, the email chains, the wire transfer documents. I signed the whistleblower affidavit. The probe was already in motion. Warrants were being prepared. I hadn't pledged to halt the FBI. I'd only promised not to send a particular file on Monday. But that wouldn't be necessary because on Saturday night, the FBI wouldn't require an email. They'd be on site. I informed Agent Miller about the gathering. I explained that every suspect would be under one roof. I told him if he wanted a headline, grabbing arrest that could secure a promotion, he should arrive at the St. Regis at 9 p.m. He smiled and accepted. This event wasn't about my pride, it was about effectiveness. I wanted them all assembled. I wanted their friends to witness it. I wanted their business associates to witness it. I wanted the world to see the Sterling family in handcuffs, dressed in evening gowns and tuxedos. I wanted that image etched into Atlanta's social memory forever. I grabbed my phone and called the concierge. "This is Miss Sterling in the presidential suite," I said. "I need to arrange for a stylist and makeup artist for Saturday. I need a dress, something red, something unforgettable." Red. Genevieve despised red. She said it was tasteless. She said it was a shade for women craving attention. She was right. I needed to be noticed. I needed all eyes on me when I pointed the blame. I spent the remainder of the day getting ready. I wrote my own speech. I reviewed the presentation I had prepared for the party. Genevieve thought it would be a slideshow of memories, photos of us smiling during holidays. What she was about to see was a PowerPoint unveiling her misdeeds. I arranged the slides carefully. Slide 1, the shell corporations. Slide 2, the tax fraud. Slide 3, Chad's cryptocurrency account. I embedded bank statements, highlighting illicit transfers in bright yellow. I even included the photo of the Lamborghini. It was going to be the most eye-opening presentation Atlanta's business scene had ever witnessed. As dust settled over the city, I felt an unusual calm. For years, I'd lived in fear of these people. I'd tread lightly, terrified of upsetting them, terrified of losing the family I thought I wanted. But that fear was gone. It had been replaced by cold, unwavering resolve. I thought about Darius, how he appeared on the video call, defeated and frail. He wasn't truly a villain. He was just a casualty, collateral damage in his mother's battle against fading into obscurity. I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I recalled the video he recorded at the restaurant. I remembered how he checked the lighting while his mother shattered my life. I remembered the text to his mistress. He had made his choice. He chose to watch my suffering from the sidelines. Now he would watch his own downfall. Saturday was near. The stage was ready. Observe my torment from a distance. Now he would witness his own collapse. Saturday was approaching. The scene was set. The players knew their roles, even if the finale remained unknown. I poured a glass of water and raised it to my reflection in the mirror. "Here's to the blissful pair," I murmured. "May they decay in quietude." The grand ballroom at the St. Regis was a cavernous hall of crystal and gold, crafted to make ordinary people feel insignificant. Tonight, it was filled with the scent of white lilies in costly desperation. Genevieve had surpassed all expectations. She had parted with the last of her personal jewels to finance this evening. I knew because I caught the pawnshop alert on her account before freezing it. She had packed the room with Atlanta's elite senators, property tycoons, tech magnates, the very people whose judgment she valued above her own integrity. The theme was black and white, stark, sophisticated. It was a requiem for her honor, though she remained unaware. I lingered in the shadows of the mezzanine a moment before making my entrance. I wanted to witness their act, and what a spectacle it was. Genevieve stood beside the ice sculpture shaped like the Sterling Properties emblem. She wore a black velvet dress buttoned up to her neck, the epitome of matriarchal dignity. She held court with a cluster of investors men clueless that their funds were currently locked in an escrow account under my control. I adjusted the earpiece in my right ear, linked to the sensitive microphones I'd hidden in the floral displays earlier, through the catering staff I had bribed. I heard Genevieve's voice ring out clearly. "Oh yes, we're just so proud of Nia." She lied smoothly. Her smile was tight and rehearsed. She's chosen to step away from the daily demands of the CFO role. She wants to dedicate herself to philanthropy. We're moving her into a senior advisor role. It's better for her well-being. You know how delicate young women can be these days. The investors nodded, sipping their drinks, oblivious to the predator lurking nearby. "Delicate," I whispered to myself. I glanced at Darius and Chad. They stood by the bar, like men awaiting execution. Both donned tuxedos but wore them like restraints. Chad was perspiring. He kept glancing at his phone, probably hoping for a miracle from his overseas bankers. But no miracles were coming tonight, only repercussions. Darius looked hollow. Just looked. His eyes flicked around the room, searching for escape routes. He appeared terrified. Good. He should be. The moment had arrived. I signaled the lighting tech in the booth. I'd paid him $500 to obey my commands, not Genevieve's. The ballroom lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the double doors atop the grand staircase. The doors swung open. I stepped into the beam. I wasn't clothed in black, nor in white, nor in the modest, sensible business suits Genevieve had forced me to wear for 5 years to appear professional. I wore red, a blood-red silk gown that hugged my figure like a second skin. It was backless. It had a slit climbing to my thigh, the kind of dress that ignites battles, the kind a woman dons when she's setting a kingdom ablaze. The room fell silent. Conversation ceased instantly. 300 heads turned to regard me. I saw the astonishment on their faces. They barely recognized me. To them, I had always been the quiet accountant in the background, the diversity hire, the help. They hardly recognized me. To them, I had always been the quiet number cruncher in the background, the token hire, the support. But tonight, I was the star of the show. I began my descent down the staircase, moving deliberately, allowing the silk train of my gown to trail behind me like a blazing river. I caught the sight of Genevieve's jaw dropping, her complexion paling. She detested red. She deemed it crude, reserved for women lacking sophistication. I met her gaze as I walked down and smiled, not a friendly smile. Darius looked at me with a mix of desire and fear. He'd never seen this side of me. He'd never cared to look. When I reached the foot of the stairs, the crowd instinctively parted before me. I strode through them, chin held high. I heard murmurs start up. "Is that Nia? Look at that gown. I thought she was unwell." I approached the Sterling family, clustered together like a tight bundle of anxiety in the middle of the room. Genevieve was the first to regroup because she was a predator, and predators never reveal vulnerability. She stepped forward, arms wide in a feigned embrace. "Nia, dear," she said in a sharp tone, "you look breathtaking. A daring choice for a corporate celebration, but you've always danced to your own rhythm." She leaned in to air kiss my cheek, then whispered into my ear, "You're trying to overshadow me. Stick to the script or I swear I'll ruin you." I stepped back and smiled for the flashing cameras. "Thank you, Genevieve," I replied, my voice steady and confident. I wanted something festive. After all, it is a celebration. Chad moved up beside Darius. He leaned close to his brother-in-law, covering his mouth with his hand, but my microphones caught every word. "Let her have her moment," Chad murmured to Darius, venom thick in his tone. "Let her approach that podium. The moment she steps down, when she resigns, security will seize her. I slipped cocaine into her purse at the coat check. We'll haul her out the back and call the police. We'll claim she was blackmailing us. No one will believe a drug-addicted woman in a dress over the Sterling family." I didn't flinch. Didn't show a sign. I just kept smiling. So that was their game. Frame me, discredit me, destroy me. They were playing checkers while I was playing chess in 3 dimensions. They thought planting drugs would protect them. They didn't know the FBI agents I'd invited were standing at the bar in disguise as waiters, sipping sparkling water, waiting for my cue. I locked eyes with Chad, looking straight into his weak, watery stare. "Hello, Chad," I said. "You look flushed. Is the air conditioning broken or is it just the heat of the moment?" Chad sneered. "Enjoy your walk, Nia. It's a long way down." I glanced at Darius. He avoided my gaze. He was staring at my dress, at the woman he had discarded. "You look stunning, Nia," he whispered. "Save it, Darius," I said, cold as ice. "You lost the right to compliment me when you tried to record my heartbreak for likes." I turned away and faced the stage. The podium stood ready. The microphones gleamed under the spotlight. It was time to finish this. I strode toward the stage. The click of my heels on the floor echoed like gunfire. The crowd's eyes were fixed on me. They sensed something was about to unfold. They could feel the electric tension, the charged air of an impending storm. Genevieve rushed to the side of the stage, signaling the AV team to start the tribute video. As the storm gathered intensity, Genevieve rushed to the stage's edge, signaling the AV crew to launch the tribute video. She had arranged a slideshow images of construction projects, snapshots of family moments, all meticulously leaving me out. It was designed to accompany my resignation. She gave me a confident nod, a wild spark in her eyes. She believed she had triumphed. She thought I was heading to my downfall. I ascended the stairs and positioned myself behind the podium, clutching its wooden edges. It felt sturdy, tangible. I scanned the crowd, the affluent, the influential, the tainted. They were all focused on me. I noticed Chad gesture to the head of security, a hefty man stationed near the kitchen entrance. The guard acknowledged and started moving toward the stage. They were coming for me, but it was too late. I reached into my clutch not for a resignation letter, but for a small remote. I glanced at Genevieve in the front row. She wore that tight, superior grin. I pressed a button. The screen behind me flickered. The Sterling Properties emblem disappeared. The sentimental music cut abruptly with a screeching feedback. Instead appeared a new image, not a building, not a family snapshot, but an enlarged bank statement projected 10 feet tall. It revealed a $2 million transfer, the recipient account, and the account holder's name, Chad Miller. The crowd exhaled sharply, a shared intake of breath that drained the air from the ballroom. I leaned into the microphone, my voice resonating, amplified, commanding, undeniable. Good evening, everyone. I'm Naya Sterling, and I am not stepping down. I am here to expose a crime. I watched Chad freeze, Genevieve's hand shoot to her mouth, and Darius close his eyes. The rear doors burst open, but it wasn't security. It was a dozen agents in blue jackets with yellow lettering, the FBI. The celebration was over. The investigation had arrived. The silence in the ballroom was profound, a heavy pressure on the ears of Atlanta's 300 wealthiest. Behind the podium, the wood was cool and smooth beneath my hands. The spotlight burned on my face, but I felt calm. I felt focused. I looked again at Genevieve in the front row. Her frozen, forced smile was cracking at the edges as the silence dragged on. She wanted me to speak. She wanted me to quit. She wanted me gone so she could reclaim control. I leaned in closer to the microphone, my voice steady, filling every inch of the room. Mother Genevieve always told me that transparency is the foundation of success. She nodded politely, unaware the compliment was a dagger. She taught me that a family's legacy is built on truth. I scanned the room, locking eyes with uneasy board members and puzzled investors. And tonight, in the name of that transparency, I want to reveal exactly what the Sterling legacy truly is. I pressed the remote again. The massive LED screen behind me, intended to show a montage of architectural achievements and joyful family moments, flickered and shifted instantly. It wasn't a photograph, it was a detailed digital flowchart, a forensic map of financial corruption. A collective gasp spread through the crowd, starting at the front and rolling back like a wave. In the realm of financial misconduct, a collective intake of breath rippled through the audience, beginning at the front and sweeping backward like a tidal wave. On the display, vivid red lines traced the flow of funds, from Sterling Properties' corporate accounts to a network of offshore entities. The names of these shell corporations appeared in bold black font: Zenith Solutions, Cayman Holdings, Alpha Crypto LLC. I turned slightly toward the screen, motioning to the information with the casual confidence of a meteorologist forecasting a storm. What you're witnessing behind me illustrates the movement of funds from the West Side Affordable Housing Grant, I stated, my tone steady and explanatory. $20 million of federal aid intended to provide shelter for low-income families. Here you can observe where the money enters Sterling's operating account, and here is where it disappears. I pressed the button again. The screen zoomed in on a particular node within the chart. It leaves the company disguised as payments for consulting services that were never actually provided, I explained. And it ends up here, in a private cryptocurrency wallet. I glanced down at Chad. He had stopped breathing. His complexion was ashen. That wallet is registered to Mr. Chad Miller, the company's chief financial officer, I said. From there, the funds funnel into luxury car dealerships, upscale jewelers, and the lease of a penthouse in Midtown that is definitely not his marital residence. Bianca let out a sharp, piercing scream like a creature in pain. She stared at Chad, then back at the screen. The disbelief in her eyes shattered, replaced by stark horror. But this is only the beginning, I continued, my voice cutting through the growing chatter in the room, because Chad wasn't acting alone. No CFO could move such vast sums without approval from the top. I pressed the button once more. The screen shifted to display tax returns, specifically those from the past 5 years. Here we see the personal tax records of Mrs. Genevieve Sterling, I narrated. Note the deductions for charitable donations. Millions given to the Sterling Family Foundation. A generous act except for one crucial detail. I clicked the remote. A bank statement appeared. The foundation's accounts are empty, I said. The funds were transferred out within 24 hours of donation. They passed through a bank in the Cook Islands, a jurisdiction notorious for secrecy, and from there were used to buy real estate in Europe under an alias. I looked at Genevieve. She was clutching the arms of her chair, so tightly her knuckles were white. Her mouth hung open, silent. She resembled a fish gasping for air on the dock. This is tax fraud, I said plainly. This is wire fraud. This is a conspiracy to defraud the United States government and the investors gathered here. The room erupted into chaos. People rose, shouting and pointing fingers. Investors scrambled to call their attorneys. Reporters snapped photos frenetically, their flashes illuminating the stage like strobe lights. I raised my hand, a small gesture, but it commanded silence. Please, I said, and there's one more thing you need to hear. The noise subsided. They hung on every word, captivated by the unfolding scandal. You may be wondering why I'm exposing this, I said. You may question why the majority shareholder would publicly dismantle her own corporation. I smiled, the kind of smile worn by someone who had just signed divorce paper over dinner. Because I am no longer the majority shareholder, Darius stood abruptly. What? He yelled. I met his gaze. I'm no longer the majority shareholder, I declared as Darius abruptly arose. What? He shouted, locking eyes with me. Poor Darius, always the last to catch on. Exactly 12 hours ago, at 9 a.m., I exercised my rights as the owner of 51% of Sterling Properties voting shares. I finalized a binding contract to sell my entire stake. Sell? Chad exploded, leaping to his feet. You can't sell this disaster. Who'd even want it? I aimed the remote at the screen one last time. A symbol appeared, a blue falcon. The emblem of Vanguard Development, our fiercest competitor, the very company Genevieve despised for 3 decades and vowed to crush. I sold my controlling interest to Vanguard, I announced. They've been after our prime real estate for 10 years. Today it's theirs. I let the words hang. I sold a company for $1. Silence fell, heavier than before. $1? Genevieve breathed. Yes, I confirmed. $1 plus the assumption of all corporate debts. Vanguard has a ruthless legal team specializing in troubled assets. They know about the fraud, the debt. They're ready to liquidate everything to recover their losses. They'll strip this company bare, take the land, the buildings, and leave the minority shareholders with nothing. I faced the Sterling family. That means you, Genevieve. That means you, Darius. You now own 49% of a company that's effectively defunct. Your shares are worthless. Your assets gone. You're bankrupt. Chad looked sick to his stomach. Darius sank back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Genevieve glared at me with pure hatred. You bitch! She screamed, tipping over her chair as she jumped up. She lunged toward me, her black velvet gown twisting around her legs, hands clawing for me. Security! Chad shouted, pointing. Arrest her! She destroyed us! Get her out! The side doors flew open. Heavy footsteps echoed. But it wasn't hotel security, a team in blue jackets with yellow letters, FBI. Behind them came agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The crowd parted like a wave. The agents moved with military precision, swarming the front row. Genevieve halted, frozen, eyes locked on the badges and guns. Chad panicked, scrambling over the table, smashing crystal glasses and centerpieces. 2 agents tackled him before he hit the floor, slamming him face first onto a plate of untouched salmon. Chad Miller, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement, an agent barked, pulling his arms behind his back. Genevieve trembled as a female agent approached. Genevieve Sterling, you're under arrest for tax evasion, conspiracy, and fraud. The handcuffs clicked loudly, drowning out the ballroom's music. They spun her around. She locked eyes with the crowd. The same friends she once sought to impress. The society that had defined her. She saw their cameras flashing, heard their whispers. She saw the end of her world. Darius wasn't arrested. He lacked the cunning for such crimes. He sat alone in the front row, watching his mother and brother-in-law being led away, He sat alone in the front row, watching as his mother and brother-in-law were taken away. He glanced up at me, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Why?" he silently mouthed. I leaned into the microphone one final time. "Because I'm a forensic accountant, Darius," I replied, "and I always make sure the numbers add up." I stepped back from the podium and caught the eye of the lead FBI agent stationed at the bottom of the stairs. He gave a nod. "Miss Sterling," he announced loud enough for the front row to hear, "we appreciate your cooperation. Your whistleblower agreement has been finalized. You're free to leave. Your immunity is confirmed." I nodded in acknowledgement and descended the stairs, not the way I had entered, but down the side steps, away from the turmoil and flashing cameras. I passed Bianca, who was sobbing uncontrollably on the floor. I passed the investors already dialing their crisis response teams. I passed the wait staff, who appeared to be enjoying this spectacle more than anyone else. I exited through the ballroom's rear doors and entered the kitchen. The noise of the party faded behind me, replaced by the clatter of pots and the shouts of chefs. I continued out the service entrance into the cool night air of the loading dock. My valet was waiting by my car. He looked surprised to see me, so soon and alone. "Leaving early, ma'am?" he asked. "The party's over," I said, slipping into my car. It was an old sedan, 5 years old, dependable, fully paid off. Not a Lamborghini or a G-Wagon, but it was mine. I started the engine and checked my bank account on my phone one last time. The whistleblower reward wouldn't arrive for months, maybe years, but the escrow account was secure. My severance was intact. I had enough to start fresh, enough to build something real. I pulled out of the parking lot without glancing back at the Saint Regis or the flashing blue lights of police cars converging at the entrance. I drove onto Peachtree Road, heading north toward the airport, toward Paris. Genevieve had given me divorce papers. She wanted me gone, so I left and I took her world with me. 6 months have passed since that night, the night of the red dress and the lights of the St. Regis ballroom, and it already feels like a distant memory. Yet the ripple effects of that evening continue to reshape Atlanta's landscape. I read the sentencing news in the morning paper while sipping coffee on the balcony of my new penthouse. It was front-page news, the collapse of the Sterling Empire, a saga the public devours, a morality tale written in bold headlines. Genevieve Sterling and Chad Miller were sentenced yesterday. The trial was swift. The evidence I provided was so thorough, so precisely compiled, their expensive defense barely resisted. They pled guilty to 34 counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. The judge showed no mercy. He described their conduct as a blatant betrayal of public trust and exploitation of the community they professed to serve. 10 years, that was the verdict. 10 years behind bars in a federal prison. I saw the courtroom sketches. Genevieve appeared diminished. The arrogance that once defined her was stripped away, revealing a fragile woman in a gray suit. No jewelry, no designer labels. She was just a number now. Chad reportedly broke down in tears as the gavel fell. She had become just a statistic, stripped of all designer brands, only her jewelry remained. Chad reportedly broke down in tears as the judge's gavel struck. Until the very end, he tried to pin the blame on Genevieve, insisting he was merely following orders. But the trail of documents tied to his Lamborghini and penthouse painted a very different picture. They were both handcuffed and led away, two thieves who fancied themselves as nobility. They say success is the sweetest revenge, but watching your tormentors face the law ranks a close second. The fallout was massive. As I predicted, Vanguard Development acted swiftly. Within 90 days, they sold off all Sterling properties. Cranes are already dismantling the land where the Sterling office once stood, making way for a new shopping center. The Sterling name will vanish from the skyline, erased as if it never existed. Then there are the survivors, Darius and Bianca. Neither face charges. Being incompetent isn't a crime, and spoiled behavior isn't illegal, but the financial ruin was complete. The government seized every asset gained through fraud that meant everything. The mansion was foreclosed on last month. I heard the auction was humiliating. Strangers wandered through the rooms where Genevieve once ruled, examining the furniture and bidding on the silverware. Bianca moved in with a college friend, crashing on a couch in a tiny studio apartment. Her Instagram, once a tribute to extravagance, has been silent for months. And Darius, poor Darius, the man who wanted a wife who could just relax. I saw him last week by chance. I was at Lenox Square Mall, picking up a gift for a client. Passing a shoe store, a mid-tier chain smelling of rubber and cheap polish, I spotted him. He was crouched down, fitting a sneaker on a screaming toddler's foot. He wore a uniform polo shirt that was a size too tight. His hair was thinning. He looked worn out, defeated, like someone who spent his entire life expecting to inherit everything, only to find out he was left out of the will. I watched him for a moment, watched him force a smile for the customer, endure a stranger's impatience, the same fake grin he used to flash at me when he asked me to fix his credit. He looked up. Our eyes met through the glass window. For a moment, he froze. He saw the tailored suit I wore. He saw the confidence in my stance. He saw the woman he discarded standing tall while he knelt there. I didn't wave, I didn't smile, I just turned and walked away. I felt no joy, no sorrow, nothing at all. He was just a stranger selling shoes. My life, however, has taken a completely different path. 2 weeks ago, I received a check from the U.S. Treasury, my whistleblower reward. Federal law entitles me to a portion of the funds recovered by the IRS and the seized assets, $2 million. More money than Darius ever earned. More than Genevieve had left after lawyer fees. I didn't splurge on a sports car or a vacation home. Instead, I invested that money in what the Sterlings never understood: true value. I launched my own company. It's called Sterling Shield. I kept the name, I earned it. But our mission is new. We're a boutique financial consultancy exclusively for women. Shield, that name stayed with me because I earned it. But now our purpose has shifted. We're a specialized financial advisory firm dedicated solely to empowering women. We focus on protecting assets before marriage, conducting forensic financial investigations in divorce proceedings, and educating women stepping into affluent family dynamics. My appointment calendar is already booked 3 months ahead. Every day, women come to me, women gaslighted by their partners, accused of paranoia for questioning financial secrets, handed legal papers they can't decipher. I sit beside them, I offer support, then open my laptop to reveal the facts. I am the shield they never had. I am the weapon they deserve. Right now, I'm in my sleek new office on the 35th floor of a glass skyscraper in Midtown. The panorama is stunning. Atlanta spreads out beneath me, while the sunset bathes the sky in rich purples and golds. The air conditioning hums softly, a quiet soundtrack of achievement. My desk, crafted from reclaimed wood, feels solid and authentic. Suddenly, my phone buzzes, breaking the silence. The screen lights up, an incoming call from Darius. I pause, staring at the name. It's been half a year. Somehow, he got my new number. Or maybe he rang the office, got sent to voicemail, and now he's trying me directly. What could he want? Money, forgiveness, to remind me how he once relied on me to manage his life, or to ask if I saw him at the shoe store. None of it matters. I lean back, sip my sparkling water, and let the phone ring. I could block him. I could answer and tell him exactly where to go. I could unleash years of anger over his neglect, that humiliating video he filmed at the restaurant, the way he allowed his mother to mistreat me. But that would drain me. That would cost me emotion. Darius Sterling no longer deserves my energy. Indifference is the best revenge. The phone keeps ringing, the vibration rattling the ice in my glass. I smile, a genuine smile that shines through. The ringing stops. The screen goes dark. He's gone. I turn back to my work. A client is due at 5. Convinced her husband is hiding money in a Nevada shell corporation. I've already uncovered the account numbers, traced the transactions. I'm ready to change her life. I enter my password and open her file. I am Nia Sterling. I am the CEO of my own destiny, and business is thriving. The greatest lesson from my triumph is this: financial knowledge is the ultimate shield. While the Sterlings depended on pride and facades, I relied on facts and evidence. My story proves silence is not surrender. Often it's the sound of a plan taking shape. We can't control how others treat us, but we can control our power. Never plead for a place at a table where you aren't valued. Instead, build your own table and own the foundation beneath it. If you believe in the strength of tracking your finances and recognizing your worth, subscribe and share this message with someone who needs to reclaim their power.